welcome. Let's have some fun. We had fun in the green room, so let's continue to act up and color outside the lines a little bit. And this is going to be the last time I look at this script. I'm just kidding. I'm totally going to follow the questions that we talked about. So I've got 4 kind of critical questions that I want to ask each of you, and please feel free to opine. And what I love about the LinkedIn Live series is that people watch it to learn. And so while your opinions are incredibly important, also let's think about the audience and the things that might be important to them, things that they can walk away with and say, I listened to this session and I learned A, B, C, D, and E. So we'll be teachers in this process. All right, first question. Customer acquisition is now viewed as the top priority for global CMOs over the next few years. Given today's uncertain, ever-changing economic landscape, how should CMOs and other B2B leaders be approaching this very important task? Dalton, I think I'll start with you.
Great. So customer acquisition has been a big part of our B2B program for many years, and it's actually a very healthy part of our program. But I think in a down market, what has changed for us is the need to lean into relationships more, because that's going to have a faster, more near-term impact, which is important right now. So we've really taken an account-based marketing approach and applied that to our client base. And so it's a client marketing program, taking a lot of those principles, using the data, layering, account mapping, and relationships, and also like a white space analysis of services that are commonly bought together, but for whatever reason, maybe there's a gap in this brand and what's happening there, and how can we, from a marketing perspective, warm them up and educate them on how that might complement them, especially during the period of time we're in right now, where they're facing a lot of pressure, a lot of economic headwinds, and they're in incredibly tight positions with their own organizations to prove value and prove it quickly.
Yeah. I'm going to ask Matthew the same question, but something that you said is so interesting, critical to me, and Uli, I'm going to ask you to reflect on it last, and that is this concept of relationships, because to me that's everything that we do. So Matthew, to the question though, what's your point of view?
I agree with everything that Dalton mentioned, but I would add to that, really looking at how you can utilize those relationships to expand at existing clients and accounts. I think one of the things that many B2B marketers and salespeople have not spent a lot of time on of late is really penetrating the account across all the different departments or verticals. And so being able to do so allows for easier entry point, and it also allows for you to continue to develop those relationships, because although account-based marketing is very important, we really look at it at the next step, which is people-based marketing.
Yes.
They don't consider them accounts, they're actual buyers themselves.
Yes. Why, historically, though, have you not done that? Is it a time factor? Is it a culture factor? Why haven't you?
I think
the penetration seems new.
I think it's a little bit of both of those.
Okay.
And with the economy doing so well and with new accounts coming on, there was opportunity for a lot of greenfield accounts.
Yeah.
And now as the world changes, as there's much more consolidation, as there's much more focus on existing accounts, it just seems that there's more of a focus back to the core as opposed to the expansion into the new spaces.
Yeah, yeah. I have a follow-up question to that, but Uli, talk about the importance of relationships in the work that all of us do, but especially from a CMO perspective.
That's very interesting, because I thought all the time, okay, we were talking about the offense game, like of acquiring new customers, but there's like in these uncertain times a lot of defense gaming, like getting into your existing client base, and this is what we do. So I think the role of the CMOs is being like on the field with all the players, and then directing, okay, are we on the defense or on the offense, more offensive part. Acquisition is really hard these days, because everywhere budget's going down and people are very tempted or offended by the political situation, by the economic situation. We have that in Europe, especially very, very strong. So inflation is kicking in eastern parts of Europe, about 15% in parts, which is really high. So yes. Germany is not that affected, so not as strong, but it will stay for a long time. We know that, and this is getting into the books right now, into the budgets right now. So getting into acquisition is quite a hard game. So what you do automatically is you concentrate on your existing client base, and I think the relationship you were talking about, and giving them an experience, bring them together, showing your human side and understanding what their purpose is and what their needs are right now is very, very important for our role.
So what each of you have talked about that I think is so interesting is you've talked about engagement, and you've talked about like being on the field and being in it. And I think that's a fairly new phenomena for some of the work that we do. But I think, you know, so much has changed recently, especially with COVID, that there's a connection that is necessary in order for us to engage. And my follow-up question to this is, in a landscape of remarkable, I called it economic anxieties earlier, but it's anxiety across the board. I mean, people are just, they're worried, they're afraid, they're angry. In our research, we talk about this level of pessimism that is invaded really all markets, it's invaded all industries. So how do you overcome that? How do you overcome that consumer that is just sad and worried, and how do you break through? Lily, your eyes answered it, so I just had to go to you first.
I think there's two levels to that. One is a brand game. So like if your brand is trusted, and well, we experienced that in the US and in Europe in COVID times. Our brand is very trusted, and for the reason made us, it was quite easy to go through the pandemic game. So we've been growing more than 40 quarters in a row. So and despite of what's taking place in the marketplace, no problem. But well, this is the first one. So trust is a brand game, and you need to be a trusted brand and trusted organization, even in these weird times. And on the other hand, I think we know that in the B2B field, it's very important to have like a direct human relationship.
Yes.
So normally our brand is like taken 10% above the average in B2C in B2B. So B2B is higher than B2C. Why is that? Because you have a direct like a person to talk to, you are taken care of. And to intensify that moment of relationship, or that relationships, is very, very important right now.
Yeah.
And these are the two levels. So we can help from brand side, brand point of view. On the other hand, like giving platforms on a social base or in event platforms where people can gather and feel that they are appreciated with their money and the problems.
Yes, yeah, money and problems. Dalton, do you have a different point of view or anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, in the services industry,
Yes.
so obviously my clients are, you know, some cases B2B CMOs,
Yes.
sometimes B2C CMOs. But what I have found right now is that being a CMO can be a lonely job, and you get to the top, and it's really hard to have that peer set. And you're lucky if you go to an event and you might meet one or two people you stay in touch with. So about 1.5 years ago, we created a CMO series, and half of it's clients and half of it's not clients. And it's really intimate and very unfiltered sharing about how much are you investing here? Is your board asking you to pull back this much? And it's just a really safe space, and there's really no agenda from our perspective except to create the room for those conversations to happen.
Yeah.
We've had such incredible feedback, because I think during times like this, they really need that sounding board and that, you know, that second opinion that, hey, I'm not the only one experiencing this.
Yes,
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
Community.
Exactly.
So my second question, which I think is related to community in terms of things that we've seen change over the past couple of years. What do you think has transpired over the last couple of years to give CMOs a more direct role in driving revenue and growth? Matthew?
I really believe it's the new marketing technology that's come into place, and the data that it provides, and the real-time decisioning and analytics that it allows us to do, and become much more consultative to the rest of the C-suite. And I believe it's as simple as that, because in the past it was very difficult to either measure the impact of marketing and or to communicate that across the rest of the C-suite. So it's been that evolution where technology has helped. I think where there's still more work to do, and I think the most successful B2B CMOs, when I'm in conversations with them, are doing is then really figuring out what's most important to the rest of the C-suite, agreeing on what those metrics are going to be, and then reporting back against those and how they impact the business, because we're almost at a point where there's too much data.
Yes.
And especially at the C-suite, we need to be very quick.
Yes.
We need to be very insightful, and we need to be able to both show the value of marketing, as well as the impact that we're having to the company and ultimately to the customer and other stakeholders.
Yeah, there is, during COVID, there was the immersion of the CTO, the Chief Talent Officer, or the CHO, the Human Resource Person, and that person was glued to the CEO. Now, like, your best friend is the CFO. is totally the CFO. And so I would curious to hear, Uli, from you and Dalton, and Matthew, you seem to have a point of view on this too, about like the merging of that relationship and all of the beauty that it yields.
It's not just between CMO and CFO, it's also like B2B and B2C growing together, coming closer. So, we're using in parts the same platform, like talking about LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So it's like it really makes sense, like to have a common view on that and have a common like organization for media and so on. So, and the better we are, or the better we can explain to the CFOs that our activities are investment and not cost.
Yes.
The closer it gets, and now we have access to all the KPIs all the time. It's not like the rhythms anymore.
Yeah.
You don't drive campaigns. It's like more like streaming. So for everybody can look it up. The CFO and CEO and all the frontline can look up where they stand and every single day. And this is like the good thing about data-driven marketing. And I truly believe that there are more and more CFOs who really believe in the power of brand,
yes,
in the power of the marketing funnel, and in they are truth supporters. So in our company, you have that wave.
yes.
In the beginning of the year, it's all positive. Then the money's getting like little. The budget's like suddenly not there anymore. But the end of the year is quite relaxed.
Yeah.
So I'm so very happy that I have a very close relationship to the finance guys, and we try to have a little more stable look on what we're doing.
Right.
And we are successful in really in very close collaboration. For that reason, it's true. We are closer than in the past.
Yes.
We have more data, and it's not like, and the rhythms are not there anymore. So it's not like every month. It's like literally every day, and we can talk to the teams and optimize stuff.
Yes.
So, and they are very happy about it because they don't have like the feeling that they're out of the game. They are automatically in the game because they got access to all the data every single day. So
right.
it's like, it's again trust.
It's far more of a partnership.
Yeah, it is.
Far more of a partnership.
Yeah.
Dalton?
Yeah, I actually call the CMO and CFO the new power couple.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually been an evolution on both sides. From the beginning of my career, finance largely, saw us as a cost center, but where we are now, those finance people largely don't exist anymore. So they've evolved and we've evolved. And to your point about everything's digital and therefore measurable, therefore we can have different conversations now. A lot of times when we're working with clients, we're in a meeting with their CFO and their CMO together, and we're doing joint planning. I think that's a really exciting evolution, especially in a downturn.
Yes.
To not be seen that way anymore, and to be seen as an opportunity to grow and an opportunity to dig yourself forward.
Right.
I think it's great.
And we're all working toward the same goal.
Exactly.
And then everybody has a certain and different role to play.
That's right.
I think that has been a huge one.
But still critical.
Yes.
Still critical is like the role of the brand. So brand investments and payoffs. So this is still not like an easy to understand thing, and it's also it's still like hard to really prove that like brand investments really pay off on the sales side.
Yeah.
So, and in short term or midterm or however. So I think this is still critical and a field of discussion. What we're having, and we're coming to that later on. But I think superior creative is really something which pays off immediately.
Yeah. Hopefully all of you have seen this research, but the new research from LinkedIn's B2B marketing benchmark report reveals a growing need for CMOs to add creative skills to their repertoire. We talked earlier about, I thought we were always creative, but I do think it's required you to be more creative. Given that we're in Cannes, the cave of creativity. That was my attempt at it, the cave of creativity. The perfect place to discuss creativity. Tell me how you're working to add or incorporate these skills in your day-to-day. Matthew?
I think that it's very important that we not lose sight of the creative, and many of us over the past couple of years, because we got excited about the technology and the data that was available, we probably over-indexed towards the science side of marketing.
Yes.
And if there's the common adage that marketing is truly the combination of art and science. So we're really trying to bring art back into the way that we are working with our large team of marketers. And there's a number of things that we're doing, because the reason that many of us became marketers and are successful in our roles is because we loved the creative side.
Yes,
And that's what we
yeah,
need to
yeah.
teach them. And so things as simple as, for example, we ran something called a creativity quest, which was looking at a lot of our existing, maybe less sexy activations that we were doing from a marketing perspective, and asking them to rethink them and to gamify them and to really give them the time and space, energy and resources to do so.
Yes.
Because we've all been moving so quickly the last few years due to the pandemic. We've all had to be agile and support different areas of the business. And it's something that a lot of our younger marketers don't have the background or pleasure of seeing how that then transpires, because no matter how great your marketing campaign is, if you don't have great creative, it's going to fall flat.
Right, right. And it brings it, but all of us are creatives in our own space. I think partnering with the creatives makes it better, but we also bring something to the table too. Dalton, you had a reaction when we talked about this previously. I would love for our audience to hear it.
Yeah, it made me laugh because I thought, well, we've always been creative, to your point, but I do think that we have been able to drink the Google juice, right? It started there, and then we had all these metrics, and we really did over-index, exactly to your point. And I think we're finding that equilibrium again of like, hey, we have all this data, but data's looking back, and right, creative's going to drive forward, and that's going to help us fill the funnel, and it's going to have, you know, an impact at the bottom line ultimately. I think one of the things that we did was we started our own brand campaign about 2 years ago, which you can imagine pitching a brand campaign to a performance marketing company. They were like, what? But we did it, and what we were able to do is turn it on and turn it off, and what we saw really consistently, despite seasonality and different times of year of running it, was about a 70% increase in write-ins to the website after we ran the campaign, and a 50% increase in site traffic every single time we turned it on. And that was all they needed to hear in order to keep going. So, you know, it's not necessarily a direct measurement, but we're able to infer the influence of it.
What prompted you to think that you needed that? I'm curious.
Yeah, we rebranded in 2018, beginning of 2019, and we found consistently in our interviews around why we didn't win a pitch or whatever is that we won, or the team selected us, but the CMO had never heard of us.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it's like the IBM effect. Like, no one's going to get fired for, you know, hiring IBM. Like, they've heard of IBM. And so we knew that we had done as much as we could do through PR, through organic effort, and we really needed to put some investment into it if we were going to get past that barrier.
Yeah. I think the things, unfortunately, we're close. I knew we were going to need more time, but we could keep going. But a few things that have stood out for me in this conversation: the loneliness of the job, the need for community, new power couples, knowing your industry, but getting onto the field, the engagement level, which is not only good for stakeholders, but it just makes your job so much more rich and so much more interesting. And the need for conversation like this. Like, I could sit here and ask you 12 more questions, but we don't have time for it, but I do have one more. In a word or less, in an adjective, but I'm open to a phrase, when you think about the CMO of the future, not just for 2024, but the CMO of the future, what does that DNA need to look like? Like, what do you think is necessary and appropriate, not just for success, but for joy and for fun, and for excitement and fulfillment, and for me, purpose, something that actually drives towards something? Uli, I feel like I have to start with you.
Collaborative, I think. So, like, bringing all the ends together, B2C, B2B, B2G, inside, outside, agency, client, inside of a corporation, I think. And if you are in the center and you are the collabo guy, I think you can really make a difference.
Collaboration.
I think this is collaboration.
Love it. Dalton?
For me, it's playing bigger. And I think that in many ways, the CMO is being asked to play different roles in the C-suite and not necessarily be in the marketing lane 100% of your time. And so really helping with M&A, go-to-market strategy, these other areas that maybe traditionally we didn't have responsibility in.
Yeah.
That's what I think is the future
Go big
for
or
us.
go home, as they say. Matthew, last word?
Transformative. We are in a really exciting time as marketers, and especially in B2B. This is a time of major change, and how lucky are we to be able to be right in the center of it.
I love it. I think LinkedIn's going to invite us back for next year to sit here and talk about all the progress that we've made. You three are fantastic, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.